Welcome to Changed for Good, Life Elevated Through Christ with LSI Studios. In this podcast, we explore the ways in which Jesus Christ can make a lasting and elevated change in our lives. Because of Him, we can become more than we were and also receive grace for where we are on our journey. I'm your host, Britta Benyon. Okay, today we have Pam Gates here, and thank you so much for being here, for being willing to come on the podcast.
Surely. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, and I am grateful for your example and testimony. I've known you for a short time only because you've lived here. How long has it been? A couple years?
2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we are in the same board, the same congregation at church, but I, just over that short period of time, have really grown to admire and love you. So
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here. And I'm excited to dive into a little bit more of your story and a little bit more of your experiences. So maybe you could start with telling us a little bit about your upbringing, your background, wherever you want to go from there.
Well, I was born in Provo, Utah. My father was not a church member, and my mother had not been active since she was a child. And so I started going to church with my friends who took my hand and took me to primary when it was during the week. And I went to BYU High School, which has been extinct for more years than you're probably old. But there I went to seminary, and I was baptized when I was 15 in the basement of the Salt Lake Tabernacle by my mother's uncle, who was at that time the librarian of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
Okay.
And I was confirmed in the church, and I just continued to stay active. My parents had no problem with me joining the church. My dad just wanted to make sure that I would be a very good one, which made me laugh out loud, knowing him.
Now, can I ask a question? Did he ever get baptized, your
when
dad?
he was deceased.
Okay, yeah.
Well, we have done all the work for my dad's side of the family. Both my grandparents were alive and they lived there, but they were not church members either.
Right. And your mom never really came back to going to church, it sounds like.
She did when she
did?
came to live with us.
Oh, okay.
And she came to live with us for the last 9 years of her life because she could no longer live alone, and I am an only child.
Yeah.
So she traveled to Georgia, Atlanta, where we were living, and we built a home with a mother-in-law suite on the main floor, and she moved in there, and she lived with us until she passed away.
Wow.
And yes, she did become active in the church. She did go through the temple. She was sealed to my dad, and I was sealed to both of my parents. She really knew very little about the church, of what you might have known over a lifetime.
Right.
But she knew she wanted to be with family, and so that's how it got started.
Yeah, that's neat. And just to touch on you mentioning that they got baptized after they were dead, that's something we do in the temple, and the people who are baptized for, since they couldn't do it for themselves or didn't choose to when they were on the earth, they have the choice to accept or not accept that baptism, but it's a neat opportunity for us to be able to go and do some of that proxy work for those who have passed on. Blessing for us and blessing for them if that's something they wanted to accept because they no longer have a physical body. So,
well, actually, my mother was baptized.
Right, she was.
When she was 8.
Oh, okay.
Because she had a wonderful mother who saw to it that she went to church. She had a stepfather who was not a member of the church.
Oh, okay.
And so that was kind of a difficult situation, but all that work's been done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It is.
Okay, so you graduated high school in Provo, and from there, I know you got married pretty soon after that. Is that right?
I went to the University of Utah for two years, and then I was married, and Jim and I moved to the West Coast where he went back to college, and I went to work, which is what they did in that day and age.
Right.
You know, so,
that's true.
yeah, and we lived there for Long time. And when he got out of college, he went to work for the Orange County, California Health Department, which that's his field to begin with. And then slowly but surely over the years, he decided to go back in the military. And he rejoined not the Navy, but the Army. And we moved to we moved to Laurel, Maryland.
Oh.
And we stayed there. And then we moved to Germany. And then back to the West Coast where he went to graduate school, and back to Atlanta where we lived for 45 years.
Wow.
That is a thumbnail of what we did.
Right. How long were you in Germany?
4.5 years.
Oh, okay.
Loved every minute of it.
I bet. What part? What part of Germany there?
Behind the walled city.
Mm.
Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
Before the wall came down.
Wow.
And probably one of the greatest church experiences we ever had. Because we were among the 3 oldest couples in the branch, and all of them were really young soldiers and their wives and young airmen. And that's where we learned to really know about church leadership and what it meant. Mm-hmm. And I think of those days with extreme fondness because we learned a great deal. We had to. Because people stepped up to the plate and did jobs in wards here they would never have been called to, not because they weren't qualified, but because they were young. Yeah. And there were so many others in the ward generally who could, take those jobs. So from that standpoint of view, it was amazing.
Yeah.
It really was.
I want to say that's probably happening more and more in the church nowadays because,
it is.
Because there's people joining the church all over the world.
It is.
And it's not established in their country, for example, or maybe in their village or wherever they are. And so that happens a lot where,
it does.
Where people are asked to serve in a leadership calling after being a member for a couple weeks,
Exactly.
And they're very young. And, so it's something that... but what a neat opportunity and what a blessing to be able to shepherd and care for people around you and to grow in your faith in the meantime, which I think is such a blessing for all of us when we serve in the church or in any other capacity, right? When we're disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ and try to live his gospel and also serve others in doing so.
Exactly.
So that's really neat. So you... had how many children?
2.
Okay.
And they're both adopted.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. And I bet that was a journey in and of itself.
It was a journey before we had both of them. We were able to be parents to both of them before we ever left the United States. Mm. We were living in Southern California at the time.
Okay.
And we had a very good lawyer friend in our ward who, at that time, now you have to realize that was a long time ago, you could have a private adoption without going through the state. Mm. And so that's how we had both of the children. They were both newborns, and they're 2 years and 6 days apart.
Wow.
And it was a wonderful experience. Kevin is still alive. He has three wonderful children. And Kimberly passed away 10 years ago last week of a cardiomyopathy, which is an enlarged heart. Mm-hmm. And we did not know she had it.
Wow. Why don't you tell me more about, as far as you said you didn't know she had it when she was growing up. Is that something that developed in her, or she always had?
It's very interesting how that happened. I will give you the shorthand version.
Okay.
When she was growing up, she was, they don't have these things here, but when she was growing up, the neighborhoods in which we lived had swim teams, okay? And they had meets the entire summer against other neighborhoods who also had swim teams. Mm-hmm. And Kimberly would go over to the pool and practice before swim team ever started. And she never could get up the speed for it. She was always exhausted. We should have picked up on it then, but we did not. And it came to pass when she was pregnant with her 3rd child, because that's when the heart reared its ugly head and she started having chest pains. And so we were able to find out that, yes, she did have that, but they could not tell to what extent because they had to put dye in her veins, and they couldn't do that when she was pregnant. And so they didn't expect her to survive. They gave her a 50-50 chance to survive the childbirth.
Wow.
And but she did. And so she was able to have her third child. It was a very long journey. She and her husband and her 2 children, at the time she was pregnant, moved in with us because I was caring for my mother who was living with us, and they lived about 45 minutes away. I couldn't run back and forth.
Yeah.
And so they moved in with us, and I became the mother at the age of 55. And my mother said, "You always wanted a big family." I laughed out loud and I said, "Well, not at my age, but that's neither here nor there." And it took her 10 years to get better, but she did. It was amazing.
Wow.
Nobody gets better from that. And it took her 10 years. And so she went back to college. She asked me, "Mom, will you help me?" And she went back to college at the age of 37 years old and graduated she got her nursing degree at 41.
Wow.
She graduated with honors, and it was probably one of the happiest days of my entire life. And she was able to work for 3.5 years, and then her heart reared its ugly head again. And they gave her a heart pump, which they do the same thing with a heart transplant. They just put it right by the side of your heart. And she was supposed to last for 5 years, and it lasted for 10 months, and she passed away.
Oh.
But it was a journey, and her children lived with us, except for the oldest, from almost the time they were born until they all left the nest.
Wow.
Which is,
Pretty...
yeah, but you never know how strong you are until you don't have any other choice. And you'll be amazed what you can rise to do. So that's the story.
Wow. I love that. And I think that it's so true for all of us that we, the challenges we're given, they're meant for our growth. I mean, the Lord knows that is the way that we can progress and grow, because we are, we can't comprehend, immense joy without immense sadness, and, and all these. So the opposition is so important, and that must have been a very challenging time for so many. I mean, her children and all involved, but what a neat experience, and how beautiful it was that she was able to live as long as she did.
Yes.
And even come out of the intensity of it, maybe, where she was able to go to school and work for a little while.
What they told her is that people don't get better. But she did.
Wow.
And the only reason that we really feel is that a bacterial infection attacked her heart. And that's what her heart could not withstand. But it was very interesting. When she passed away not from a heart attack. She passed away from a brain aneurysm. And the last organ in her body to shut down was her heart.
Wow.
And it was just like the little train that could. I've stayed here this long. I'm not giving up now.
Wow.
But anyway, that's what happened. It was a hard time.
Yeah.
And especially since her daughter graduated from high school 3 weeks after she passed away. And so we had to move on. We had to do the best we could so that it wasn't a somber, awful memory for her to remember of her big day. And it was a big day because she's another interesting child. She's Asperger. And so that was a challenge for us. But
definitely. So I know that you had mentioned before we got started that you were overseas actually when you found out about her heart. Is that correct?
No. We did not find out about her heart until several years later, because when she was a child is when we lived overseas. When we came back, and she was married.
Right.
And the only reason she found out about her heart was when she was pregnant with her third child. She started having chest pains.
Yeah.
And that's why they couldn't completely say exactly what it was and how intense it was, because she was pregnant and they could not put dye in her veins until after she had the child. So she was pregnant with her third child when we discovered that that's why she had no stamina her whole life, which we never really knew, and we never really pushed it because I am a terrible sportsman and I don't swim across the pool well. And I thought, well, she's just like me. Only for her, it was a completely different story that we didn't know.
Yes. So, so then when were you living in, you told me that you had lived in India for a short time.
When Kimberly's heart got better, we have a friend who had founded a school and a medical outreach program called Rising Star, and it's in the southern part of India, and so she came to us and wanted to know if we would like to go there, if we would like to become involved with the school, because we had mentioned that the school is set up so that you pick a child to sponsor and pay so much money a month. And so we had mentioned to her that it'd be fun sometime if we could go there. So she came to us with not only asking us to go there, but asking Jim to be head of the school in the medical outreach program. And of course, he could hardly wait. And I was, okay, what am I going to do over there? But Kimberly got better. And so we decided that we could go.
Okay.
So we were going to stay for 2 years, and we ended up only staying for 1 because that's when she got the bacterial thing.
Oh, I see.
But Jim was actually head of the school, head of the medical outreach program, and I had a really hard time finding something to do because I didn't want to work in the school. I really didn't. And so the lady who founded the school said, I want you to start a choir of children. Children in India don't know how to carry a tune because they don't sing, not like we do. They don't, because they don't go to primary, and they really don't have any church. They just simply go to the shrine.
Right, or maybe not even in their schools.
Or they don't sing in the schools either.
They sing in schools. So,
exactly. So I did. And believe me, that was probably the struggle of my whole life. But we did it.
Yeah.
And at the last, not the show, but at the end of the school year, when they had a big school concert, which was hilarious, but we had a school concert, I ended up having those kids sing primary songs. Now, you have to bear in mind that they're Hindu. Actually, they're Tamil, which is a different branch, but it's still. But I had those kids singing primary songs. I had no idea what they were. But it was a lot of fun. And the song that they loved the most was, If You Don't Walk As I Do, I Will Walk Beside You. That's one of my favorite things, because these were children of the leprosy of affected parents and grandparents. They did not have it. But in order to go to school, they had to have a parent or a grandparent who had it.
Wow.
And I taught them songs from The Sound of Music, and they had no idea what they were singing, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I did is I went into the school teachers meeting at the end of the day. I've been there about a month maybe, and I didn't know what else to do, and I said, is anybody interested? Because the classes have to be taught in English, but the teachers speak a variety of English. So I just went in and said, is anybody interested in conversational English? And 14 out of the 15 teachers raised their hand, and I went, oh my gosh. But like again, you rise to it. And so I just went into the school and took all of their 3rd and 4th grade kind of primer books, and that's how I taught them. And then you can go online and you can download ESL for $30, and they give you all kinds of school plans.
Wow. That's
and so we met 4 times a week, And I know more about those people than I think their families do, because what do? You talk about, what do you eat? Where do you buy your clothes? What do you feel about an arranged marriage, which is what they have, you know? And so we went through the whole gamut. And honestly, those people are as dear to me today as they were then. It was an amazing experience, because not only do I not have a college degree, I don't have a teaching degree.
Yeah.
But there again, you know, I love President Nelson's comment, the Lord loves effort. And if you want to badly enough, you can do it. So that's what I did.
That is wonderful, and what a good example you are of somebody that just rises to whatever they have put before them. I mean, it's
you know, it's just something that you just need to do, and I didn't want to sit there.
Right.
And Jim was doing everything he does. He loves. He was working with all the outlying villages on their water sanitation, and then he was working with the school with what they were teaching the kids. And so I thought, what am I going to do? So, but anyhow, it was a wonderful experience. I'm so grateful that I had it.
Yeah, so you found something, right?
I did.
I think that's so applicable again to our lives, where the Lord can place opportunities or even just ideas and thoughts into our minds that, you know, hey, what about this phase of my life? Is there something more I could be doing, or something else I could be, even when it's more specific to, say, you know, something you do in the church, like a calling. What can I do, or how can I best serve this person? Whatever it is, right? Like there's, and the Lord can help us know what options there are, or give us just ideas and thoughts.
You know,
with that.
That's really, really interesting that you should say that, because actually in my life, that's exactly where I am right now. What is there left for me to do? You know, I mean, really. All my grandchildren are reared. They all have lives of their own. Our son does live out here. He lives in Mesa.
Oh,
but every phase of your life changes with what you're capable of doing, what you have time to do, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you reach the other side of the mountain, which is exactly where I am right now, you say to yourself, okay, Lord, I'm still walking. I can still speak. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And sometimes it comes and sometimes it doesn't, but it does come. And sometimes it's only in small, when's the last time you called so-and-so? When is the last time you checked on so-and-so? I've had more of those now than I've ever had in my whole life. But, you know, I think that's a way of saying, this is what you can do. You can fellowship. You can make people feel better about their lives, and look for the small things, look for the kind things that you can say to others. That matters too. I had to learn that. But if you are diligent about it, you'll get an answer.
Yeah, definitely. I love as well that I guess your thought about the small things and the little things that can amount to something really important to some, especially like a friendship or something. Like it can be so valuable to some people. So,
you know, we hark to the scripture, out of small and simple things can derive things that are great.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think in this day, I know everybody's busy and they have busy lives, and you're in a completely different stage of life than I am. I get that. But I think that people don't necessarily think that much, as much about how important it is to say something kind to someone else. I have seen that in this ward, where I have watched a particular lady, who shall be nameless, who went up to someone after they had done something and just told them, you did a really great job. And I thought, does she realize how much that means to the person? I mean, simply, we we've reached the stage in our life where we actually have a gardener. It's killing my husband, but we have a gardener because he can no longer do, and we have a very big backyard. And so when he came this time, Jim went up to him and said, and he's Hispanic, and he doesn't really speak really well English.
Mm-hmm.
But Jim said to him, you are such a hard worker. I appreciate so much the work you do around here. And he looked at Jim and said, nobody ever tells me that. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And I thought, how simple is that?
Mm-hmm.
How easy is that? So sometimes I think we wait for big moments where, we can make a huge difference. But that's not what counts to me.
Yeah.
What counts are the little things that you do every day.
Right, and who knows how big that
Exactly.
moment can be in someone's life.
Yeah.
Like, really, it's hard for us to really understand that or to see it.
Yeah.
Because we can't always see the fruits of, but that's such a neat story and good reminder for all of us. So I want to touch on something you shared with me, and many people know, or some people know a little bit about you and your background with singing. And you mentioned that you led this children's choir in India, but you've led other choirs. How many were in that choir where you lived for 15 years? You directed?
70.
Yes, so that's a big choir.
Yes, it is.
And so, so you have a wonderful musical background. And I guess when you started the choir, the first time you directed one was in a branch.
That's a hilarious story. I was an opera singer when we moved overseas.
Mm-hmm.
I studied there. I did some concerts there. I sang with the United States Army Band. And I was doing a lot of solo work, which was one of the reasons why I wanted to move there anyway. Hmm. And then our branch president called me in one day and told me that he wanted me to start a branch choir. And at that time, I had no experience leading choirs. I had led primary, but that's not the same. Mm-hmm. And so I said to him, you've got to be kidding me. What do you want me to do with my left hand? And anyone who knows about leading choirs knows they mirror each other. Only I couldn't get this one to go, I couldn't get my left to go with my right, and I thought, this is not going to work. And he said some very pointed things to me and mentioned the vows, the promises that I'd made in the temple. And so grudgingly, I told him I would do it. It was very difficult for me to speak to him for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And it was very difficult to do that because he was the branch president. My husband was his first counselor. So I started, and I taught myself how to lead a choir in the mirror. That's the only thing that I can tell you. I thought to myself, if I can follow me, anybody can follow me. And that's how it started. And wonderful. Slowly but surely, as we moved in the different wards and states that we were in, that became my life. And honestly, 14 years after that experience, I had the opportunity to run into him in the Atlanta temple and thank him for the opportunity that he had given me that at the time I thought was the worst possible thing that could ever happen to me. And it was a blessing. I think the Lord gave me that out because I gave him such a hard time to begin with. And I think he said, this is your chance. And so I was able to do that. And one thing led to another. Did it start out being 70 people? No, it did not. Mm-hmm. But it grew over the years, and we give 4 to 5 concerts a year. They're a wonderful choir. They are an amazing choir, and now they're led by someone who is an outstanding musician, whom he and I are still in touch with one another, and I just am thrilled to death for every good experience that they have.
Yeah. And how many doors that opened later on in your life. Like, I think
Huge.
It's such a wonderful story of how the Lord gives us opportunities, both in the church or just in life in general, that we can, like turn our noses up at or think, oh no, that is not something that I do, or we're just so scared of it. It's not something we're willing to do at first, and it's
exactly
we want to turn away and run. Like it's not something we're willing to do. But I think that is such a good story of, again, how you were able to say, well, I can do it. I can figure out a way. And then you did. And then just, the ways it blessed your life on down the road for so many years is so neat.
It did. And it was, I don't know. Sometimes I look back on some of the experiences I've had. And at my age now, I think back and think, I couldn't do that now. But at the age you are, if you're called to do it, somehow or other, the will or the talent or the work is there. And if you're willing to put one foot in front of the other, it's amazing how the Lord helps you. I'm astounded every day at what, when I look back and think, oh my heavens, you must have been right out of your mind. But, you did it. You did it. And I'm grateful to the Lord every single day of my life for the challenges and the experiences that I've had, because He's allowed me to rise to them, where I don't know if under different circumstances, a different place, I would have. I don't know.
Right. Well, and it makes me think of Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths. And I love that scripture because really He's the one in charge. And if we trust Him, then He can make so much more out of our lives than we could ever think possible, or out of a situation that we could ever imagine, because our understanding is so limited compared to His.
It's very, very interesting that you should say that, because for years, Jim and our two children and I carried that scripture in our wallets. That became our family kind of a guideline, and it's one of my very favorites to this day. And that's what you have to do. And sometimes you have to take a step into the darkness, not knowing what's there, and that's scary.
Yeah.
But then the light grows as you walk on.
Definitely, it's that little, particle of faith.
Exactly.
Faith is as the first principle of the gospel, right? It's something the Lord wants us to exercise so that He can then show us more.
Right.
That's so wonderful. So, is there anything else you want to share or talk about, I guess, before we close?
Actually, I think I've told you my whole life story in a very long period of time. But no, I would just say, well, actually, there is something that I'd like to say. I don't have any brothers and sisters, as I've already told you, and so the Lord has placed in my path amazing friends. I have friends that I knew when I was in first grade. We are still friends to this day. And whenever I have longed for a family, brothers and sisters, the Lord has placed people in my life to take that spot. I work really hard at it. And the reason I do is because my friends are my family. Yeah. I could count on them, and they know that they can count on me. But they don't just drop into your lap. You have to do something about it. You have to be the friend back to them that you want them to be to you. And so whenever I say my prayers at night, I never fail to thank the Lord for the friends that He has given me, for the examples that they have been to me, how they've lifted me up when I desperately needed it, and how they have been there for me in years past, and how they're still there for me now. That I count as one of my greatest blessings, because of the lack of brothers and sisters. It's not easy being an only child, because all the responsibility falls on you with your parents. Now, it's not that you wouldn't do it, but it's just that there's nobody else to say, what do you think? You know, what's your best clue? You know him or her as well as I do.
Yeah.
Jim has been wonderful there, but there again, they weren't his parents. So I've just been extremely grateful for friends, and I've just felt the hand of the Lord in my life. There were times when we had some extremely difficult problems, beyond what we have not discussed, which is just as well, but we've had very difficult problems, and I didn't know how we were going to get through it. But I kept saying, the Lord will not leave us. He won't leave us to have our house sold on the courthouse steps, which could have happened to us through something that happened at Jim's Jim's business. It was finally resolved, and it wasn't his fault, but it took 2 years.
Wow.
And so through it all, I kept saying, the Lord's not going to leave us. He's not going to have us out on the street with 8 people who live with us, and there's no place to go.
Yeah.
And that's always been the attitude of what I've had, and it's been difficult.
Yeah.
But it's paid off.
Right, and in those moments, it's that much harder when you're in it, in the thick
of
it. Too.
Exactly.
And maybe that was when you were carrying around that scripture. I don't know.
That could very well have been.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm sure it was during some of it during that time frame. But you just put one foot in front of the other and do the best you can.
Definitely. And when you were talking about friendships, and the way you were describing it, made me think of something that Christ teaches, is that do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because that's the way we get outside ourselves a little bit more, and we can become more of a true friend, and then allow the friendship to blossom and grow as we are putting forth that effort. Again, coming back to the Lord loves effort in any aspect.
People who have a lot of brothers and sisters, and you don't even have to have a lot, but people who have them don't realize what a blessing it is. Now, you may have moments where you disagree, but nonetheless, they're there.
Yeah.
And so when they're not there, the Lord expects you to, if you want that in your life, I think the Lord expects you to move forward and do your part. And so, as I said, I work at it. And we moved here. This is neither here nor there. You can leave this out. We moved here because of Rick Mangum's parents. We were stationed with them 45 years ago in Germany.
Wow.
And through the years, we have remained friends. And so when Kimberly passed away, and her girls were grown and on their own, our son Kevin kept saying, "You really have to move out here. I'm tired of getting on a plane." And so he just said, "You really have to move out here." So there was no question in our mind. We moved here because of Carol and Dick Mangum. And one thing has led to another, and the other thing that we feel is we were led to the right ward. We were led to the right house. And so, the Lord's there. You just have to open your eyes and accept it.
Yes. And look for it. And
exactly.
You will see him everywhere.
You will.
That's such a beautiful testimony. Thank you so much, Pam. And
thanks
for your
welcome.
time. And again, for all that you are and all that you do, because I think there's so many that look up to you and that are beneficiaries of your friendship with them.
Kind.
And so we just appreciate you, and thanks for being an example of a disciple of Christ. We need them all all throughout the world and wherever we live, right? So thanks again.
Surely.
We'll see you soon. I want to thank our guest again for being here today. I pray that as you listened, the Spirit whispered to you the specific actions you can take as you move forward in your daily life. I know Christ is there, and that following those promptings will bring you closer to Him and to lasting and elevated change. May God be with you in your journey. To find out more, visit us at lsistudios.com
And to learn more about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, visit comeuntochrist.org or reach out to us.